One of the main events that sparked the Chicana movement was the 1969 Chicano Youth Liberation Conference. More than 1,500 young men and women gathered over Easter weekend in March of that year. The conference was held in Denver, Colorado, and was sponsored by the Crusade for Justice. It was at this meeting that Chicano issues first gained a national platform, and this is where the self-defining term Chicano was adopted. The conference focused on the Plan del Espíritu Aztlán and was led by leaders such as Corky González and workers like Juanita Domínguez, Priscila Salazar, and Marcela Lucero Trujillo. At this conference, women began to incorporate themselves into the male-dominated discussions and railed together to address feminist concerns at the meeting. They wanted to deal with not only issues of racism, but also sexism within their households. After leaving this conference, women went back to their communities as activists, and as a result, this signifying the beginning of the Chicana feminist movement. After this 1969 conference, women across the U.S. organized many small activist groups in their community. This resulted in the formation of many different organizations, such as La Raza Unida Party. This party was founded in Crystal City, Texas, a town of about 10,000 Mexican Americans who made up 80% of the town's population. Because of the segregation practices at the local high school, community leaders began to protest against the educational inequality between whites and Mexican Americans. Leaders such as Luz Gutierrez, Marta Cotera, and Rosie Castro took action beyond Crystal City and fought to reform the education system through the use of laws and public policy. In May 1971, over 600 Chicanas met in Houston, Texas for the Mujeres por la Raza conference. The two largest workshops were Sex and the Chicana and Marriage Chicana Style. A survey was taken at this conference that showed that 84% of the women there felt that they were not encouraged to seek professional careers and education was not considered important for Chicanas. Also, 84% said that there was not equal pay for equal work, and 72% said that there was discrimination towards them in La Raza. In 1973, Encuentro Femenil, the first Chicana feminist journal, was published. This journal explores the sexism and racism facing Chicanas at the time. There were other important publications emerging at this time, such as the newspaper Hijas de Cuauhtémoc and a book of articles called La Mujer en Pie de la Lucha. Chicana feminism, which paralleled to the Chicano movement, helped the Chicana become more recognized as a viable asset in her community. A few prominent names in Chicana feminism are Mirta Vidal, Ana Nieto Gómez, Marta Cotera, and Gloria Anzaldúa. The Chicana could not rely on the man in the Chicano movement or the woman in the women's liberation movement. Each of these movements wanted the Chicana to sacrifice her needs for the larger movement. Women who fought for their rights were often told by both groups that they had to choose between being woman and being Chicana. Chicanos and Chicano loyalists often accused Chicanas of being traitors to the movement and compared to Anglos of the women's liberation movement. They are viewed as being anti-family, anti-cultural, and anti-man. They accuse them of trying to split the movement and not supporting the cause. The Chicano movement often ignored the request of Chicanas to incorporate issues such as abortion and reproductive choice into their platform. This backlash from the community forced Chicanas to discuss how Chicana feminism should relate its movement to the rest of the Chicano movement. Loyalists to the Chicano movement felt that racism needed to be addressed before sexism. They used arguments against Chicanas were disrupting the roles or males and females within the Chicano community. The more independent she became, the more she was labeled by the movement as mujer mala, and the more they were accused of taking up the Anglo women's fight.
Breaking gender roles. What Chicana women have accomplished is terrific success as members of the workforce. So some will argue that their jobs in maquiladoras, food processing plants, and other factories are abusive and not ideal For a poor, uneducated woman, these jobs provide necessary additional income that is needed. With this money, Chicanas have greater autonomy, whose influence has spilled all over into their marriages and gender roles. Mexican-American women in traditional roles. Traditionally, in Mexican society, Mexican women were under the authority of Mexican men. Men derived their macho maleness from both their jobs they worked and their dominion over their wife. Mexican women had status chiefly due to, at a young age, their virginal purity and later as a capable wife and mother. Chicanas as workers. Mexicanas' great leap forward came about as Chicano families gradually adapted to the market economy of the U.S. Large agribusiness farms prevented subsistence agricultural life and forced Mexican men to work for wages. Insufficient data. Unfortunately, there are insufficient data fully delving into the employment and educational pictures of the Chicano. To date, further statistical breakdowns about women only reflect Anglo, Latinas, and Black women. 57% of Chicanas 14 years and older were income recipients in 1971. According to the National Census in March 1972, 544,000 Chicanas were in the labor force. Because Chicanas may suffer from sex discrimination as well as from racial discrimination, the Chicana's income is at the bottom of the economic ladder. The median income of the Chicano was $5,100. That was almost 3 times as much as the median income of the Chicana, which was $1,800. In fact, 54% of the Chicanas had incomes below $2,000. While political discourse and feminist literature play considerable roles in the Chicana feminist movement, Chicanas also express their ideals and dissatisfactions through poetry, artwork, literature, film, and most recently, Chicanas are posting on the web.
And now we take you into famous Chicanas. Authors, poets, artists, singers, actresses, and more, much more. We will begin with Dolores Huerta, a civil rights activist born in Dawson, New Mexico in 1930. She's most notoriously known as the co-founder for the United Farm Workers, or UWF, alongside Cesar Chavez, and the Great Farm Workers Movement. She's won many awards, 2 of the most famous being the Eleanor Roosevelt Award for Human Rights in '98, as well as the Medal of Freedom by President Obama in 2011. Many people do not know that she actually began her foundation with money that she won in a civil lawsuit against the San Francisco Police Department. Her image is constantly being used for movements such as Si se puede, Vive la causa, and her iconic picture with the Huelga sign. And now we continue on to Gloria Anzaldúa, born 1942 and regretfully passed away in 2004. She studied at the University of Texas and has won various American Book Awards, as well as the Lambda Literary Award for Lesbian Small Press. She described herself as a, quote, Chicana dyke feminist, Tejana, Badache poet, writer, and cultural theorist. She has been internationally acclaimed as such and has helped mold Chicana lesbian and queer theories. Some of her famous works include This Bridge Called My Back, La Prieta, Borderlands, La Frontera, The New Mestiza, as well as Making Face, Making Soul, Haciendo Caras. Next you'll see 3 different Chicana actresses, Eva Longoria, Constance Marie, and America Ferrera. While these are the 3 that we see with, quote, pure bloodline of Mexican heritage, this is barely the tip of the iceberg. Many actresses have a Mexican bloodline. They're mixed with Puerto Rican, mixed with Anglo-Saxon, mixed with you name it. These 3 are the first that come up when you do a Google search. You'll also see famous actresses like Sofia Vergara, Salma Hayek, Jessica Alba, Penelope Cruz. And while all of these women represent fiery Latinas, not all of them are actually Chicanas. But we'll let them play along too. Next, we'll talk about famous Chicana singers. First and foremost, the most popular and modern would be Jenny Rivera, born 1969 and regretfully passed away in 2012 in a horrific plane accident. She's the founder of the Jenny Rivera Love Foundation, an organization that specifically helps single mothers. She's iconically known for being from Long Beach, claims she went to school with Snoop Dogg and is just as gangster as the rest of them. She specifically gave a voice to the women who were fed up of being mistreated by men and spoke out for feminist movement through her songs and her famous quotes. She died far too young, and her death was on international news for weeks. Last but certainly not least, we come to the Queen of Tejano, Selena Quintanilla Perez, born 1971 and was tragically murdered in 1995 by the president of her fan club. Grammy award-winning artist, known for being an entrepreneur, starting her own clothing line, and radically changing the way Chicanas were viewed by the world. She pushed the limits, never settling for the mold that she was born to fill, instead creating her own persona which rings and has stood the test of time. Some of her best sellers include Bidi Bidi Bam Bam, Como la Flor, Amor Prohibido, and Tecnocumbia. It's safe to say she was the first Chicana sex symbol in music. She is also, without a doubt, the first person that anyone will name when you ask them to give you a famous Chicana.
Chicana issues: abortion, reproduction, and health care. Chicanas want the right to control their body and make choices concerning them. Healthcare should be provided a staff that includes the Chicana and should be controlled by the Chicana community. There should be bilingual assistance so that the Chicana is always aware of what is going on and able to get the help that she needs. Forced sterilization of poor Chicanas is also a big issue. In the past, doctors have rationalized that it is okay to force women into sterilization, especially those whom are minority and poor. This is something that Chicana feminists and all women should make sure does not happen. Childcare. Childcare was a very important issue to Chicana feminists. They want to free childcare that was also bilingual and bicultural. They want to be able to seek employment without having to pay amounts for childcare that are equivalent to their rent. They also want the Chicano community to recognize that child was not the duty of the woman, but the responsibility of the community. Employment and education. Chicanas want education that is culturally relevant to them and is free of sexism. Chicanas have been historically and presently underrepresented in education. Chicanas want education for their children and that will not reject them from their culture. A few reasons for this is the lack of support from the public education system and the lack of importance placed on education for females in the Chicano culture. Employment and education go hand in hand. Problems that exist with employment are communication barriers, lack of information concerning interview techniques, and a lack of competitive entry-level skills. Even when Chicanas do have the required skills, they are not getting equal pay for the equal work. They are also making less than the Chicano and Anglo male and less than the Anglo woman. Rape and abuse. Rape and abuse to women must always be taken seriously. Domestic abuse is not the right of the husband. Men must respect their women. It is important to the government that the Chicano community and the government take the issue seriously and take a firm stance against rape and violence. Restructuring political familialism. The role of the Chicana is typically of the mother and the caregiver, while the family structure is important to the Chicana. She also wants to be recognized as an integral part of the family and the larger community. Utilizing the talents of women and seeing them as equals is important.
Yo me acabé 2 cartones, tomé tequila montones y el olvido no ha llegado. Ya fui a rezar.
And now we give you our blog post question, which has already been posted on the website. How has your definition of a Chicana changed or evolved from what you wrote on your slip of paper at the beginning of our presentation?